Okay, get this. What if I told you that a single solar panel, say on a rooftop in Mohali, is directly connected to the United Nations? Sounds a bit out there, right? Well, today we're going to follow that connection. We're going to trace the power from one single rooftop all the way to India's biggest climate promises on the world stage. Let's dive in.
I mean, it really does seem like a stretch, doesn't it? You've got one family's choice on one side and massive global climate policy on the other. But what we're about to find out is that the link between them isn't just real. It's incredibly direct. And it's actually powering one of the biggest energy transformations happening anywhere on the planet right now.
All right, first up, let's look at your panel's global connection. We're going to trace that line from a single home right to the world stage.
So here's the main idea to keep in mind through all of this. That solar panel, it's not just about saving a few bucks on your electricity bill, right? It's actually a piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. Think of it as your piece, your contribution to this huge, coordinated plan for a healthier planet.
Okay, to really get how this all connects, we have to zoom way out. We're talking the biggest picture possible. Let's start with the world's shared goals. You could even call it the planet's official to-do list.
So, back in 2015, the United Nations came up with these things called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The easiest way to think about them is like a giant to-do list for all of humanity. It's super ambitious, covering everything from ending poverty to cleaning up the oceans. And pretty much every country, India included, signed on.
And this is where solar power comes in. It's like a master key. On one hand, it helps with SDG 7, which is all about getting clean, affordable energy to everyone. And on the other hand, it's a huge help for SDG 13, taking urgent action on climate change. So you've got one solution knocking out two of the planet's biggest goals. Pretty efficient, huh?
And the impact, wow, it's just staggering. Just look at that number. Over 200 million tons. That's how much CO2 India's solar capacity stops from going into the atmosphere every single year. That is a massive boost for SDG 13. To put that in perspective, it's like taking tens of millions of cars right off the roads.
Okay, so we've seen the big global goals. Now let's zoom back in a bit and look at India's specific promise to the planet. How does the country actually turn these big ideas into real action?
You've probably heard of the Paris Agreement, right? It was this historic moment back in 2015 where basically every country on Earth agreed to work together to tackle climate change. The whole idea is simple. Everyone has to pitch in. Everybody has a part to play.
So a big promise is great, but how do you actually make it happen? Well, that's where something called NDCs come in. It stands for Nationally Determined Contributions. The best way to think of it is like a country's homework assignment, or its report card, that it submits to the UN. It basically says, okay, here's our plan. Here's exactly what we're committing to do.
And here's what's really cool. This isn't a one-and-done kind of plan. Just look at the trend here. Back in 2015, the goal was to get 40% of our power from non-fossil sources. Fast forward to 2022, and that target jumps up to about 50%. And now, the aim for 2035 is 60%. You can see India's consistently upping its game, getting more ambitious with every step.
Okay, so ambitious promises are one thing, but how do you actually make them a reality? That brings us to our roadmap to net zero. Let's take a look at the specific plan. So much of the plan comes down to this one huge number, 500 gigawatts. And just so we're clear, a gigawatt is an enormous amount of power. We're talking enough to power an entire major city. This 500 gigawatt number is the absolute cornerstone of India's Pancharit Pledge, its big five-part promise on climate. Hitting this target by 2030, well, it means completely overhauling our energy system.
And you know what? Here's probably the most incredible part of this whole story. Remember that goal to get half our power from non-fossil sources by 2030? Well, India didn't just meet it. It absolutely smashed it 5 years early. As you can see here, we've already blown past that 50% mark. And the star player making it all happen? You guessed it, solar power.
This chart really shows you the scale of what's happened. Just look at this. In 2014, India had less than 3 gigawatts of solar. A tiny amount, really. But by 2026, that number has just exploded to over 150 gigawatts. That's more than a 50 times increase. It's that kind of insane exponential growth that makes these huge climate goals actually achievable. So let's put it all together on a timeline. The story really kicks off in 2015 with the Paris Agreement. Then, in 2022, India raises the stakes with even bigger ambitions. That sets us on the path to that massive 500 gigawatt target for 2030. And all of this is building towards the long-term goal, getting to net zero emissions by 2070. You can really see how each step builds on the last.
But here's the thing. A roadmap is just a piece of paper, right? These big numbers don't just magically happen. To really understand how this is all possible, we need to zoom all the way back in. Forget the global stage for a second and focus on the real engine of all this change, people. And more specifically, it's women who are powering this future.
Think about that for a second. India's climate fight will succeed only if women lead it. That completely reframes the conversation, doesn't it? It tells us that this whole thing isn't just about technology and government policies. At its core, it's about empowerment.
And here's exactly why that's true. First off, women are often the ones managing energy in the household, and they're the ones who suffer most from the health problems caused by dirty fuels. So when you empower them with clean energy, they're going to make better choices for their families and their communities. Plus, they represent this huge, untapped pool of talent for all the new green jobs being created. And the data shows it. When women are leading the charge, new tech like solar gets adopted way, way faster.
This brings us to an absolutely fantastic initiative called the Surya Takis, which literally means Friends of the Sun. And what's great is that this isn't some program being pushed from the top down. Nope. It's about training women from local communities to become clean energy entrepreneurs. They become the trusted local experts who install, maintain, and spread the word about solar, right where they live.
And their role is totally hands-on. We're talking about women who are up on rooftops installing panels, they're inside homes fixing systems, and they're in the community centers helping their neighbors figure out all the paperwork for subsidies. They're not just technicians, they're business owners. They're becoming the local, trusted faces of this whole energy revolution.
So that's the journey we just took. We went from the United Nations, down to India's national promises, and all the way back to a single person in a local community. And solar is that golden thread that weaves it all together. It connects your home to the country's goals, and ultimately to a healthier planet for every single one of us.
And in the end, it really boils down to this. The sun doesn't play favorites. It rises for everyone, every single day. The technology is here, it works, so the only real question left is for us. How are we going to use all that incredible, limitless power to build our future? Thanks so much for joining me.